welcome everyone to MyVictory Church, one church in 5 physical locations plus an online campus. So let's welcome everyone that's joining us in Tabor today with Pastor Renee and Jill. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome Claire's home with Pastor Brian and Heidi. Welcome to you guys. Welcome everyone in Okotoks with Pastor Joel and Tanisha. Welcome to you. Welcome Lloydminster with Pastor Mike and Carol. Welcome to you guys. Welcome Lethbridge with Pastor Ralph and Cindy. And welcome online campus wherever you are around the world. Special welcome to you. And here we go. Brand new series called Extraordinary. Now the last series, we did our summer series, and me, myself, and why. And in that series, I did a lot of teaching, a lot of notes, a lot of line upon line, kind of teaching. And this series, we're going to kind of shift modes a little bit and get into a little bit more preaching, if that's all right. And the reason why we're going to do this, we're going to talk about extraordinary. And the reason why we're going to get into preaching is because I don't know if you've noticed like I've noticed, but I've sensed a shift happening in our world in 2020. Anybody else that there's been a few events happening. I don't know. We turned the calendar in 2019 and thought 2020 is going to be amazing. And I don't know about you, but I'm like, could we go back and restart 2020 again? But I've noticed our entire world has made a seismic shift in our approach, in just our thinking, and you see the entire world doing this. And one of the things that I've noticed, maybe you've noticed it like I've noticed it, but one of the things that I've noticed is when the entire world has shut down, it seems like that fight in many of us as people, that passion to kind of, move ahead and really go has really kind of hit us kind of hard. And when we shut everything down, we've kind of slipped into apathy. That we realized that before, COVID and everything shutting down, that maybe we were too busy and we're reluctant to ever go back to too busy again. But we're instead of going back to anything, we're kind of like, well, we're going to not do anything. And that is a lot harder. I don't know if you guys are finding it like me. It's a lot harder to kind of motivate yourself like you used to. Is that just me? That's all of us. I think that's all of us. Maybe some of you are special. I don't know. But I think many of us have noticed this kind of thing. And I've been thinking about it and praying about it, especially for my own thinking in my own life and going, man, what is wrong? That same motivation, the same drive that I used to have before, it seems twice as hard to get re-motivated again. I'm like, man, what is this in me? And so I felt like we should do a series called Extraordinary, where ordinary, let's talk about what is ordinary, and let's talk about the little bit extra, and talk about the extraordinary, because the extraordinary, extraordinary gets God's attention like nothing else. And I think that there's been a major shift in church as well. And I just happen to believe this, and we're going to preach through this all fall, and we're going to be talking about this, but I think that we as a church are being set up like never before in all of history, and that there's a shift that has happened, and it's time for the church to rise up like never before. And I think we got to resist the urge to sit back and to step back, and resist the urge to kind of settle into ordinary while the rest of the world is settling into ordinary and to apathy. It's time for the church to wake up, take a step forward, take its place in society, take its place in what God's prophecies are, what the Bible's prophecies are, to rise up and to be the church like we've been called to be. Amen. Listen to me. We can make excuses or we can have growth, but we can't have both. It's time for us to step up from the ordinary and begin to live extraordinary. And I'm not just talking, when I talk about the church, I'm not just talking about a building. I'm not talking about the pastors who are paid to be the church. I'm not talking about the staff or the volunteers. I'm talking about it's time for all of us not to attend church anymore, but to be the church. For all of us to step up and be extraordinary. And what would happen if Christians rose up from the ordinary and became extraordinary? We could begin to influence our societies like never before. While everyone's stepping back, we're stepping up. I'm telling you, I've been pent up for 9 weeks teaching. We're going to let this go, all right? This is good? Okay, we're gonna let this go because listen, the little bit extra, extraordinary. We're gonna take a couple weeks and look at this and see some things in Scripture. But trust me, there's so much in the Bible that reveals to us that God's attention is grabbed, and the Bible says this: that His eyes are looking to and fro in the earth of who He can pour Himself into, and what He's looking for, and what seems to get His attention is the little bit extra. Let me give you an example. Numbers chapter 13. The Israelites are entering into the promised land. They're about, they've left Egypt and they've crossed the wilderness, and they've done this in about 40 days. And it's an amazing story all throughout the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers. They get to the edge of the Jordan River, and they're supposed to cross over and do this. But Moses gathers together a representative from all of the 12 tribes. He gets, give us one of your leaders, somebody that you trust. And he says, give us one of those leaders. And we're going to send them in for a period of another 40 days. And their job is to spy out the land and bring us back a report. So let's pick this up in Numbers 13, verse 17 says this: when Moses sent them to explore Canaan, this is the 12 tribes, he said this: go up through the Negev and into the hill country, see what the land is like, and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. Now I want you to pay attention to something. I want you to pay attention particularly to what Moses' instructions are, because there's something extraordinary that happens in this, in the instructions. Moses is a boss. He's the leader. He's who's everybody's, looking to for guidance. And he's calling these 12 guys, and you can see him maybe call them into his tent, and he has a little meeting. He says, okay, here's your instructions. Here's your assignment. Number one, go into the hill country, go out there and spy out the land, and tell me, number one, what the land is like. Then he says, number two, tell me about about the people. Are they strong or weak, few or many? Then he says this in verse 19. What kind of land do they live in? Number three, is it good or bad land? Why? Because their whole purpose is to get into this land to set up a nation. And he wants to know, is this a land where we can live off of? Is it productive that we can feed our families of? Is this a place where we can plant crops and it's going to produce crops that's going to supply all 3 million of us at the time? Or tell us, is the land good or bad? This is normal. Then he says this: what kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? This is smart. This is smart leadership saying, okay, guys, go in there. Tell me about the land. Tell me about the people. Tell me about the towns. Are they walled or fortified or what is, are they unwalled? Because what kind of battle are we needing to prepare for? This is smart. Then he says this: how's the soil? Verse 20. Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. And it was the season for ripe grapes. So listen, this is Moses' assignment. He tells these guys, pulls them aside and said, hey guys, when you go in there, I want you to identify, is the land good, or are we going to be able to build houses on this land? Is it stable? Is it not stable? Tell me about the fruit. Is this soil that we can plant, fruit in? Is it producing the fruit? Tell me about the cities. Are they walled or unwalled? Tell me about the people. Are there few or many? This is a smart strategy. So that the 12 go out and they spy the land, and they come back and give a report. And here's the report. Now notice this in verse 26. Here's the report they give back. They come back to Moses and Aaron, and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. Now I don't know why Moses did this, but Moses, instead of having the 12 guys come into his tent first and report just to him to hear what the report is going to be, for some reason he has all 12 come and report, and all 3 million people are standing there listening to this report. And I don't know that if that was the smartest move on Moses' part, that Moses could have maybe taken it himself and taken that information and then relayed it back and told the people. But he had a report in front of all the people, and this is what happened. They reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. Now this is what we know, is that they came back. The grapes were so big that it says one cluster they had to carry on a pole between 2 men. I mean, I'm picturing the size of these grapes being as big as a watermelon each. You're going to have, what does it take? I mean, one cluster you have to carry between two men. No, one guy can't carry. I don't know. I haven't been to the grocery store lately and seen a cluster that I'm like, hey, babe, could you help me? Let's get a pull. Let's carry. I mean, they come back. This would be very, very impressive, don't you think? I mean, coming back and they're showing one cluster of grapes and everybody's eyes are getting big, and showed them the fruit of the land. They're like, oh my goodness, we are good. This is good. So they gave Moses, verse 27, this account. It said, we went into the land which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. This is what God has promised them for generation to generation, that, hey, I'm going to take you into a land, establish you, and it's going to flow with milk and honey. Which, little side note on that, do you ever notice that the land flowing with milk and honey? I don't know if the Israelites picked up on this when God promised them this, but the land that flows with milk and honey, milk takes work to extract. You have to milk the cow, right? Honey takes work to extract, and a few stings along the way. If they would include in, this is just me and my thinking. Our thinking as Christians sometimes is that life in God is going to be easy without work. That if we get into God's promised land, that it's going to be a life that doesn't need any work. That anybody ever heard the open door theology? That wherever God leads, the doors are going to open. And it almost sounds like, oh, walk thee in it, that everything becomes easy. Listen to me. The wilderness, where they were never supposed to stay, was the place where they were led by a cloud and they were led by a pillar of fire, and that they had manna drop from heaven. They didn't have to work for it. They had golden grams come from heaven, and they woke up, put their bowl out there, caught it, went back in and ate, and God supplied them when they were like, nah, I'm sick of this. God gave them quail. Anything that they got thirsty, they hit a rock and water poured out. It doesn't sound like a whole lot of work. Yet the promised land, which is their destiny, it required flowing with milk and honey. It required some work. And we think that if we get into God's perfect will, into God's perfect place, that there's not going to be work involved. And if there's work or there's opposition or we get stung a few times, we are thinking, I must not be in God's will. But if you're going to get honey, you're going to get stung. If you're going to get milk, you're going to have to do some work. I don't know if that's speaking to anybody, but it's speaking to me. So they reported back and they said, here's its fruit. Number 4, check. That's what Moses asked. How's the fruit? How's the fruit of the land? Here's its fruit. They answered number 4. Check. Here's the land. The land is good. It flows with milk and honey. That's number 2. How's the land? Check. Verse 28. But we always get into trouble when we start a sentence with that. Remember me preaching a message a while back? How big is your butt? 1T. That excuses always start with, yeah, but. And anything after, yeah, but, pretty much can't happen anymore. Isn't that right? The land flows with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there, which the descendants of Anak is code for giants. So Moses asked them, he gives them instruction to say, are the people there strong or weak? And they answered, they're very strong. In fact, they're very big. Then he says, what kind of towns do they live in? Fortified or unwalled? And they said, the cities are very fortified, very large. Do you notice something? They answered the exact questions that Moses sent them to answer. Look at this in verse 29. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites live in the hill country. The Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. I mean, they had all the ites, and mosquito bites they had all the ites in there. So what did Moses ask? He says, tell me about the people. Are they strong or weak, or many or few? And by the fact that they could list all of these people, they said the people are many. Notice again, they simply answered Moses' question. They fulfilled their assignment. They did exactly what the boss told them to do. That's ordinary, isn't it? That's ordinary. But look at extraordinary. Verse 30. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Listen to me. Nobody asked Caleb. Nobody asked him to speak up. No, Moses didn't ask him to speak up. In fact, I would venture to say this. It should have been Moses that spoke up. Moses was the leader. He should have been the one to say, okay, so what? The cities are fortified. Do you remember when God marched us across the Red Sea and wiped out the Egyptians? So what? The people are many. You saw the miracles when we took care of the Amalekites in the wilderness. So what? That the walls are fortified. If God can part a sea, he can knock that wall down. So what? We can surely do this, for God is with us. That should have been Moses. And if Moses would have stood up in that moment, I think the people would have went. And nobody asked Caleb to stand up. Nobody asked Caleb to speak up. All they were asked to do was to report on those 4 things. And they reported on those 4 things. Caleb is one of the 12 spies. He reported just like everybody else. But all of a sudden, he's probably sitting there waiting for Moses to speak up. And he's like, anybody else? He's hearing the murmuring behind him of all the people and going, oh, wait a second. They're big. Oh, my God. Are we going to be able to do this? Oh, the cities are fort. Did you hear that? The cities are fort. He's hearing all this whispering behind him, all this doubt and all this fear and all this stuff starting to sweep. And all of a sudden, he can't take it anymore. And he's watching Moses. Are you going to do something? Are you going to do something? He can't take it anymore. And he's maybe looking at Joshua, and he's like, what do we do? Like, what do we? And all of a sudden he speaks up and he says, we should go and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. And if you think this is a little insignificant sentence, and you think that nobody noticed, we're reading about this 4,000 years later and recorded as somebody who did something a little bit extra. And God noticed too. Look at this in Numbers 14. When all of the people got afraid, and when they decided that we can't do it, we can't take possession of the land, we're not able to do this, God pulls Moses aside and has a talk with Moses. And it's a pretty serious talk. And this is what God said to Moses. Nevertheless, as surely as I live, and as surely as the glory of the Lord fills the whole earth, not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt, which, by the way, is all 3 million people, and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors, including Moses, whom he was talking to. Listen to me. We can look past some of these scriptures and miss some of the points. The fact that God brought up the past means there's some purpose in it. The purpose of the past is not to get stuck in it. The purpose of the past is to give you faith for the future. And what God was saying, hey, these people became afraid. Did they not remember the plagues? Did they not remember the Red Sea? Did they forget about the healings? Did they forget about the quail, the manna? Did they forget about all these things? Remember all the things. They forgot about all of that. The purpose of the past is to give you faith for the future and saying, if God did that for me, this in front of me is nothing. Look how far God has taken me. If he could bring me this far, this next step is going to be easy. And he says, not one of them is going to see the promised land. Verse 23, he reiterates this again. He says, no one who has treated me with contempt will ever see this. Watch, listen. I put myself in the stories. I do this all the time. And I'm thinking, if I'm one of the 10 spies, I'm thinking my argument back would be, but that's not fair. God, that's not fair. What do you mean I treated you with contempt? I did exactly what Moses told me to do. He gave me 4 things to report. I did my job. I reported back. I did exactly what Moses told me to do. It's not fair. Don't you think the 10 spies had reason to argue this? It's not our fault. Listen to me carefully. God is not moved by ordinary, but he notices extraordinary. Because look at the next verse. No one's going to see it. Verse 24. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit. Wait a second. All that Caleb did was speak up when Moses did and nobody else would, and saying, we can do this. That's all he did. We can do this. And it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't something that I don't think was a big deal at all. He just spoke up and said, we can do this. That's all he said. And God said his spirit is different. His spirit is not ordinary. His spirit is extraordinary. He has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly. I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Listen to me. Caleb did get in. Caleb's descendants did inherit the land. He did see it. God sees the extraordinary. Your boss might not see it. Your spouse might not see it. Your pastor might not see it. You might go, man, I'm doing the little bit extra, but nobody's noticing. But God never misses somebody who does a little bit more than ordinary. Somebody who puts a little bit extra in there. God pays attention. Caleb caught God's attention. And we're at a turning point in our season as a church. We can do ordinary church, or we can do extraordinary church. It doesn't matter what we've seen in the past. What matters is what we do now. Our future, your future depends on it. Will you do just enough to get by, or will you do the little bit extra? '60s. Maria, a black woman in the middle of racial tension like never before in the South, was driving at nighttime in a torrential downpour and had a flat tire. She pulled over to the side of the road and gets out drenched, soaking wet. She sees the flat tire. She doesn't know how to change it, and car after car passes by and leaves her on the side of the road soaking wet. This one car pulls up. A white man gets out and gives her a ride to the next town and gets her to a phone and gets her help, all the rest of it, and drives off. And just before he drives off, she says, "Hey, what's your name, by the way?" And he, thinking nothing of it, he gives her his name. 2 weeks later, he gets a knock on his door. This is 1960. And the knock on the door is someone delivering a large color TV, which is extraordinary. He's like, "What?" He opens up the note that comes with it. She says, "Thank you so much for stopping. My spirits were as dampened as I was. Thank you for taking me for that drive. You didn't have to do that." She says, "Because of you, I was able to get to my husband's bedside just before he died to say goodbye. This is a little token of my appreciation. Yours truly, Mrs. Nat King Cole." Not a big deal, helping somebody on the side of the road. But I'm telling you, the extraordinary gets God's attention. Today's takeaway is this: a willingness to do extra is always rewarded by God. A willingness to do a little extra is always rewarded by God. Laziness. The definition of laziness is doing just enough to get by. Doing just enough to get by. Jesus called the servant in Matthew 25, verse 26, in the parable of the talents. The servant who did just the ordinary, buried the treasure, the one talent. He didn't lose it, he just did ordinary. Jesus called the one who did ordinary wicked and lazy. Wow. I'm thinking, he didn't lose it. God called just doing enough to get by wicked and lazy. My challenge to all of you is this week, God's attention is grabbed by someone who does a little bit extra. So this week, when you go to a restaurant and you're thinking, "I'm just going to do the ordinary tip," what about a little bit extra? Or this week at work, "I'm just going to do just what the boss asked me to do. He told me to do it. I'm just going to do what he told me to do," just like Moses told the spies to do what they just did exactly what he told them to do. No, this week I'm going to do a little bit extra at work. With your spouse, with your kids, with your relationship with God. Don't be ordinary this week. Let's do a little bit extra. Because a little bit extra gets God's attention. Amen? Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for your word. I thank you for Caleb and his boldness to speak up when he wasn't asked to and did a little bit extra. Thank you for that little prod. Holy Spirit, this week I pray that you'd help us to see and catch us and speak to us from within when we have an opportunity to do the little bit extra. And we thank you, Lord, for equipping us and strengthening us. Give us the wisdom to know what to do and the courage to do it. In Jesus' name, amen. If you're here today and you don't yet have a relationship with Jesus, I want you to know it's a relationship. It's not joining religions, not joining church. It's a personal relationship with our Father. And I want to invite you into that relationship. And all you need to do to begin that relationship is confess with your mouth that Jesus is God and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. And if you do that, we're going to lead us all in a prayer that does just that. Confess with our mouth that Jesus is God. If you pray this prayer for the first time right here, right now, and you believe what you're praying is true right here in this moment, you can begin relationship with him. So let's pray this together. Everyone repeat this after me. Dear Jesus, I confess that you are God, and I believe that you rose again from the dead. And I ask you right now to become my God, my Lord and Savior, my friend. Thank you for forgiving me of all my sins, for accepting me just as I am. I give my heart to you. In Jesus' name, amen. And I ask everyone to keep their eyes closed and heads bowed. If you prayed this prayer for the first time, you just boldly raise up your hand, give me a wave, and say, yeah, Pastor, I prayed this prayer the first time. I want to begin a relationship with Jesus. At the end of the service, we'd love to give you Bibles. Our free gift to you explains what this relationship's all about. You can look around one more time, make sure I didn't miss anyone. Just give me a wave and say, yeah, Pastor, I prayed this prayer for the first time. I want to begin a relationship with Jesus.